There are forests where the trees not only grow, they intertwine. The light doesn't descend, it filters in. Every branch, every root, and every shadow seems to have a will of its own. In these places, the world is not governed by speed or force. It is governed by silence, and by that which is capable of adapting without being seen. They are humid, dark jungles buried in the fog of memory and time. Forests lost among mountain ranges, ravines and rivers that breathe beyond the human eye. In its depths there are no paths, no compasses, only trails forged by generations of animals that never needed to be discovered. The invisible ones live there. On the waterlogged ground, armies of ants make their way like living machinery. They don't kill for pleasure or glory. They dismantle corpses with surgical precision. They make entire bodies disappear in a matter of hours, following a process that no human civilization has been able to imitate. High above, among the tall branches, the gibbon swings. Its arms, longer than its legs, make it an absolute canopy acrobat. He can travel through the entire forest without touching the ground, communicate with cries that travel miles and disappear before anyone can see him. Further north, when autumn covers the temperate forests of Europe, the red fox emerges from the leaf litter. It challenges no one. It just waits. It follows in the footsteps of wolves, collecting what they leave behind, hiding what it finds. It's neither predator nor victim. It's something else. Something that knows the cracks in the system and how to live within them. And in the jungles of the New World, where vegetation smothers the earth and death lurks in the form of vines, insects, and mud, the jaguar moves like a whisper. He doesn't need to run. He kills silently. And sometimes he just waits for someone else to do it for him. Neither of them seeks direct confrontation. Neither roars to impose itself. In this hidden world, victories are achieved from the shadows. The protagonists of this story don't impose their strength. They adapt, they wait. They read the signs of the forest before taking a step. Scavengers, opportunists, strategists. They survive where others fail, without needing to fight. Where the sun's rays barely manage to penetrate the foliage, where humidity envelops everything, and every root seems to hide a trap, the forest does not surrender immediately. You have to learn to read it. You have to know how to wait. There are no paths, only shadows. Trees like pillars of an ancient temple, and a soft ground that absorbs steps and secrets. Life in this corner of Asia is camouflaged among textures. Feathers that imitate leaves, insects that mimic bark, predators that blend into the landscape. But there is one who not only inhabits these darknesses, he dominates them. He doesn't chase, he stalks. He doesn't run, he waits. And when he decides to move, it's too late. Between roots and shadows, the reticulated python extends its empire without making a single noise. It is a reptile that does not need poison to kill, because its most lethal weapon is time. With a body that can exceed 6 meters in length and muscles capable of wrapping and breaking a deer, this snake is the result of millions of years of silent evolution. Her skin, covered in a hypnotic pattern of interlocking diamonds, is not an ornament. It's absolute camouflage. Between mud, leaves, and roots, there is no way to see it until it is already part of you. The python doesn't improvise. It observes, detects heat, studies patterns. It can spend days in one place, motionless, waiting for something to cross the invisible threshold of its attack. Then, in a silent flash, he launches himself with a speed that belies his patience. Once his jaw grips, there are no screams, no prolonged struggle, only the precise, exact, lethal coiling. The blood stops flowing. The body surrenders. There is no explosion or mercy. There is calculation. Unlike its South American counterpart, the anaconda, the reticulated python, doesn't need bodies of water to move effectively. In the Asian jungle, its domain is terrestrial. It can climb and swim, but its true kingdom lies on the ground, among damp roots and dense undergrowth. His eyes, without eyelids, reflect the light with a dull shine, like those of a statue carved in ancient stone. Its forked tongue collects particles from the air, translating them into olfactory signals that guide it. But to maintain that precision, the python must periodically renew itself, shedding worn skin that no longer serves its purpose. When this wear and tear becomes visible, when the body begins to feel heavy, dull, lackluster, then the inevitable moment arrives, molting, a ritual exclusive to reptiles. With slow movements, it begins to detach itself. It rubs its head against sharp bark, coils around branches, and leaves behind a whole skin, as if emerging from its own past. What for others would be a wound, for it is renewal, a snake rebuilding itself to continue being relentless. This isn't the image of noisy violence, it's the elegance of the inevitable. A force that doesn't need to run to catch up. With its new, fresh, shiny skin, the snake blends even better into the shadows of the damp soil and twisted roots. Only a minimal movement of the wind or a rustle among the leaves betrays it. Patient, motionless, it becomes part of the landscape, another fragment of the mud and weeds. It doesn't rush forward or close the distance quickly. Its prey, a nervous and alert rabbit, ignores the silently approaching threat, unaware that the renewed camouflage conceals an insatiable predator. The rabbit approaches to drink from a barely visible puddle with its guard down, confident in the apparent calm of the surroundings. Then, slowly but with pinpoint precision, the python begins its stalking. A gentle ripple runs through its body, which glides with a hypnotic, almost imperceptible rhythm toward the exact point where the victim will be within reach. With a precise movement, the python surrounds the rabbit, squeezing with increasing force, enveloping it in a deadly embrace from which there is no escape. The small body struggles for a moment, its legs trying to escape, but there's no room, no respite. The pressure grows relentlessly until not a single muscle moves. In that absolute silence, the python slowly loosens its grip, certain that life has given up. The moment of the attack is not an explosion of violence, but the silent closing of a perfect trap. While below, among the mud and shadows, this huntress rules silently, high above her territory. Another entirely different world opens up. A world where branches cross like floating bridges, where life doesn't touch the ground, and where speed is measured in leaps, not leaps. There are no roads, only heights. The gibbon, an invisible acrobat, is an absolute specialist in moving where no one else can. Belonging to the Hylobatidae family, the gibbon is a small primate compared to the great apes, its closest relatives. But what it loses in size, it makes up for in an astonishing ability to adapt. Every feature of its anatomy is designed for a life far from the ground. Its extraordinarily long arms reach up to 1 meter in length, far exceeding the length of its legs, a proportion that no other primate possesses to such an extent. Its flexible shoulders allow for complete rotation, facilitating quick and precise movements between branches. This apparent disproportion has a reason. On land, the gibbon is clumsy and vulnerable. It can barely take a few upright steps before it is forced to stop, as if the ground were completely foreign to it. But as soon as he reaches a branch, his body transforms. It moves by brachiation, swinging from branch to branch with such agility that it can cover distances of up to 5 meters per second, making jumps of more than 10 meters between trees. It doesn't run, it doesn't climb, it soars through the heights, and it rarely fails. This skill is no coincidence. In this environment, evolution rewarded those who best adapted to living at high altitudes. Up there, fruits are more abundant, predators are scarce, and opportunities are greater. Individuals incapable of moving quickly or accurately disappeared generations ago. But those who survived perfected this art. But it's not just her body that's adapted to this vertical world. Her voice is also part of the landscape. Equipped with an inflatable laryngeal sac in its throat, the gibbon is capable of emitting sounds that travel long distances in the midst of hidden forests. These calls, which can be heard up to 2 kilometers away, penetrate the vegetation and warn others of their species about territories, threats, or areas where ripe fruit is abundant. And these aren't just screams. Gibbons have one of the most complex vocal repertoires of all primates. Some species even perform coordinated and precise duets between males and females, which strengthen pair bonds and mark territorial occupation. It is a sonorous language that helps avoid physical confrontations in an environment where a mistake, a fall, or an injury means death. The gibbon's social structure also reflects this logic of caution and efficiency. Most species form stable, monogamous pairs, something unusual among primates. This organization does not respond to a sense of morality, but rather to a territorial strategy. A male and a female, along with their offspring, are more efficient at controlling a section of the forest, avoiding confrontations, and exploiting the resources dispersed among the trees. Their main threats come not from other animals, but from humans. Massive deforestation has fragmented their habitats, and although gibbons avoid open forest edges where they become vulnerable, they lose territory every year. Yet gibbons have managed to survive in the most inaccessible and highest corners of the Asian jungles. Because if in other environments strength or cunning define survival, here agility and prudence rule. Only on rare occasions, when an unexpected clearing cuts through the forest or when drought empties hidden pools, does the gibbon venture down. With measured, silent steps, he crosses the leaf-covered ground, aware of every moving shadow, every sound that could give him away. It is not an impulsive gesture, but a calculated necessity, an act of forced prudence in a territory that does not forgive daring. Although he may be a master of stealth and go unnoticed among ground predators, this apparent confidence vanishes when he looks up. Because the real danger does not lurk below, but in the heights of the canopy, where the gibbon reigns. There, beneath the green canopy, the silent shadows of the deadliest predators glide, the Asian harpy eagles, birds of prey with powerful talons and keen vision, stalking from above with the patience of an ancient hunter. These birds, experts at hunting small mammals and primates, blend into the landscape like winged ghosts, waiting for the precise moment to strike down their prey with a devastating flight. The threat from above is constant at all times, and that's why the gibbon must precisely measure every leap, every swing, every note of its call, because one false step can betray it in an instant. Vigilance becomes a permanent state, a tension that never relaxes. The need to remain invisible, to avoid any sign that might attract unwanted attention, shapes the gibbon's every gesture and decision. And while on the ground they can avoid some threats, it is in the complexity and danger of the high forest where survival truly comes into play. The gibbon survives thanks to a unique combination of agility, stealth, and intelligence honed over millennia, a delicate balance that maintains its place in a relentless ecosystem full of shadows where survival is not for every species. And there, suspended among the branches, sheltered from the gaze of heaven and earth, the gibbon sings. Its call resonates among the trees, and far away, others respond. It is in this exchange, like an ancestral echo, that the living dynamics of the hidden forest are defined. He doesn't need to impose himself with violence. He doesn't descend to compete on the ground. He's simply not interested. Their territory is high up, where the light barely touches the leaves and the air is cleaner. Because in this ecosystem, evolution didn't reward strength or aggression. What truly sustains survival is the ability to avoid conflict, to move without error, and to communicate unseen. And in that, the gibbon has a centuries-long advantage. But not all species are made to live at high altitudes. Deep below the canopy, where moisture pools between exposed roots and vegetation, blots out the light like a fog ceiling, lives another kind of organization. There are no chants, no visible individuals, just a silently advancing mass moving with a precision that requires no commands or hesitation, as if each fragment responded to an ancient and immutable command. Beneath the soft soil of Southeast Asia's tropical forests, army ants of the genus Dorylus form living columns that advance among downed trunks and tangled roots. They don't build permanent anthills. They don't rest. They move like a ground swarm and respond to a single impulse, to find what the forest has abandoned. They don't kill for sport or out of excess. They mobilize because something has died, like a bird that couldn't take flight after a poorly healed wound. The jungle, sooner or later, sporadically offers these corpses, and they, meticulous scavengers, usually arrive first before other parasites and insects to take advantage of every opportunity. When they find a body, they don't hesitate. In a matter of minutes, they set up a millimetric disassembly line. Small workers clean the exterior and tear the skin, while larger ones penetrate the internal organs. There's no brute force, there's method. Hundreds of jaws work in unison, clipping and extracting pieces that are transported in a single file to the colony. The animal's body, still recognizable at first, transforms into a disintegrated silhouette in less than an hour. The efficiency is such that, at the end, not a single soft fragment remains. Everything has been removed, stored, redistributed. They don't digest the carcass. They carry the loot to the colony's mouths, where other castes process it. This behavior is no exception. It's part of their evolutionary routine. The Asian forest ecosystem generates life in abundance, but at the same time, it also generates death in abundance. And in this dizzying cycle, army ants have positioned themselves as opportunistic recyclers. What's the point of wasting energy hunting live prey when natural death has already done the work for them? But if the body of the colony is nourished from the outside, its heart is protected from within. There resides the queen, a living structure enormous in comparison to her daughters unable to move on her own, sustained by the will of thousands. Around her, a caste was born with only one purpose: to die for her. Soldier ants don't gather or feed, they don't reproduce, they don't flee. They have mandibles so developed that once closed, they often can't reopen. Their bodies are designed like living shields. When moving, they form cords along the colony's flanks. If a threat appears, the soldiers rush in without any calculation. They don't wait for reinforcements, they don't retreat. Their mandate is to hold the line and buy time. Because while they fall, the queen keeps moving, the workers continue carrying larvae, and the colony advances without stopping. This kind of discipline is neither emotional nor symbolic. It's pure genetics, a perfect programming that brooks no doubt or error. Soldier ants exist to disappear when necessary, and they do so without drama, without spectacle. They simply do their part, as they have done for millions of years. But the jungle doesn't always wait for death. Sometimes war comes of its own accord. Doryless colonies cross paths on the edges of their territories. The air becomes charged with invisible tension. There's no negotiation, only calculation. If the loot is sufficient, such as a pool of insect eggs, a large newly found carcass, or a termite nest, the attack is decided. The smaller workers begin the harassment, exploring rival defenses. The soldiers line up, forming a shock front. There are no ranged weapons. Everything happens hand-to-hand in silent combat, without roars or screams, but with the same intensity as a confrontation between big cats. The tactics are always multiple. While one group attacks from the front, another attempts to flank, penetrate the line, and reach the larvae. Because in this war, the goal isn't territory, it's offspring. Destroying enemy eggs is cutting off their future. Stealing them is multiplying your own. Battles can last for hours. At the end, the field is littered with tiny corpses. No one stops to pay homage. The victors recover the useful bodies, retreat with their stolen goods, and life goes on as if nothing had happened. The seemingly calm ground hides the remains of an invisible war that remains unwitnessed, but is fought with the same rigor and precision as any other fierce battle in nature. In the thicket of Bukit Barisan, where the rain pours down without interruption, and the sounds of birds, monkeys, and wind blend together, ants build their empire silently. They do so from below without drawing attention, but dominating every corner they inhabit. If they must confront other colonies of their own species, they will do so without hesitation, with the same determination and strategy they apply to every move. The most disturbing thing is that they do it with overwhelming success. The Asian jungle is disappearing behind the fog, and on the other side of the hemisphere, Europe's temperate forests are preparing for another form of transformation. Perpetual humidity does not dominate, instead cold creeps in. The jungle gives way to forest, the deep green to the fire of autumn. But the logic remains. Closed, dark, and difficult to penetrate environments continue to harbor creatures that have made stealth and strategy a way of life. The trees change, the climate changes, the continent changes, but the pattern repeats itself. On the edge of a fog-shrouded European forest, a leaf falls and disappears soundlessly beneath another. The air is thick, tinged with aromas of damp bark, mushrooms, and aged branches creaking under the invisible footsteps of something unseen. It's autumn, and the shadows have changed shape. The The trees have shed their garments, revealing a world of light and shadow where every movement has consequences. In this changing season, when the urge to feed becomes a silent race against the cold, predators intensify their activity. Some hunt with brutality, others wait with cunning. One of them moves among roots and bushes without raising suspicion. It leaves no trace. It doesn't attract attention, but it does. The red fox, possessed of legendary cunning, has managed to adapt over generations to the most diverse environments in the Northern Hemisphere. In the deep forests of Europe, this predator maintains its hunting abilities intact. It is capable of catching field mice, rabbits, birds, and digging among fallen trunks in search of insects or small reptiles. It can stalk stealthily, calculate distances, and attack with precision. But in this closed and dangerous environment, the fox knows that it is not always necessary to risk itself to feed itself. Because after every wolf or lynx hunt, there are remains, sometimes a paw, other times viscera that no predator consumes. The opportunity lies in those leftovers. Red foxes, aware of their neighbors' habits, follow wolf packs at a safe distance. They don't expose themselves or challenge others. They wait, memorize routes, detect the places where hunts usually take place, and stalk the remains. When a carcass is abandoned, the fox approaches. Its exceptional sense of smell allows it to detect remains buried under layers of damp leaves, and its finely tuned senses pick up even the smallest movements and sounds in a threat-laden environment. Only when he is sure that the danger has passed does he approach the loot that others have spurned or left behind. This behavior is not accidental. The red fox is opportunistic by nature. Although he hunts frequently, he knows when to avoid exerting himself and take advantage of other people's work. And he does so with a series of tricks that demonstrate his intelligence. If other smaller scavengers, such as martens or stone martens, have arrived earlier, the fox may feign disinterest, wandering about with apparent unconcern, and then pounce on the remains when the others have left. If he finds more food than he can consume, he buries it in small larders that he remembers with astonishing precision, returning to them days later when the forest has already changed and no one else knows where to look. It has even been observed stalking carrion birds, waiting for them to swoop down on forgotten prey in order to locate them through their activity. It is not strength that distinguishes him, but rather his reading of the environment and the surgical patience to take advantage of any favorable circumstance. This behavior might seem opportunistic from an outside perspective, but nature operates by different rules. Evolution does not reward courage or ethics. It only recognizes the effectiveness of individuals. Those who survive are those who reproduce their lineage, and the red fox has been perfecting this dual strategy for millennia, hunting when it's convenient, waiting when it's sensible. In the cold European autumns, when visibility is reduced, scents change with the humidity, and predators lurk without warning, cunning is more valuable than courage. And the red fox is a master at reading the signs of the wilderness. That's why it has managed to adapt and thrive where others fail, making waiting and opportunism a refined survival tool. The environments and protagonists change, but the logic remains the same. Because in the wild, the brave fall, the skilled survive, and the opportunists prosper. And this fox, hidden behind the moss and roots, knows it better than anyone. But the forest doesn't end where the trees end. In some parts of the UK, as night falls and the city quiets down, a familiar shadow crosses gardens, damp sidewalks, and back alleys. It's the same animal, the same reddish fur, the same honed cunning. But this time, far from the thicket, it walks among streetlights, wooden fences, and suburban yards. The red fox has begun to colonize human space. He doesn't do it by accident. He does it because he understands that here, as in the forest, there are opportunities. On the outskirts of many British cities, and especially in neighborhoods with large gardens and backyards, it has become increasingly common to find makeshift burrows under sheds or near old fences, where mothers raise their pups in relative peace. For the fox, these urban corners replicate the essential elements of the closed forest: visual protection, escape routes, predictable food. They don't need to hunt. In many cases, they don't. Some neighbors, touched by their presence, leave meat or leftovers for the cubs. Others don't do it consciously, but trash remnants, pet water bowls, and poorly closed food bowls are enough to attract them. The cunning that allows him to avoid wolves or eagle owls in the forest allows him to move unseen among cars, fences, and streetlights here, elusive but present. And although it remains a wild animal, its tolerance for humans is growing. This behavior is not without risks. Cohabitation leads to accidents. There are cases of foxes injured by vehicles or conflicts over minor attacks on small pets. But the fox seems to have made its calculations. In the urban environment, competition decreases, resources stabilize, and the threat of large predators disappears completely. It's not domestication, it's pure adaptation. What appears to be an exception could become the norm in a few decades. Because as happened with the raccoon in North America, what today seems like an urban anomaly could become another stage of evolution. A new version of the red fox, more urban, more stealthy, less hostile to human presence, more comfortable among bricks and concrete than among roots and bushes. The forest has changed, but so have its boundaries. And between the blurred contours of the wild and the domestic, this opportunistic fox returns to what he does best: reading the terrain, anticipating and prospering. Not all competitors go head-to-head. Some prefer to observe from afar, record moves, memorize routes, anticipate mistakes. And when it's all over, they descend. Just as the fox hides among roots to seize the right moment, there are others who master the same art from the air. Because in this game of opportunism, not everything is decided on the ground. There are also those who soar above the trees with a plan in mind and patience on their wings. Black, shiny, the raven has spent millennia perfecting a strategy that doesn't rely on strength or numbers. It inhabits the dense forests of Europe, from humid beech forests to the northernmost conifers. And in all of them, he has found a way to thrive, without risk, without competition, without exposing himself. Observe, calculate, and then when everything has calmed down, take what you need. Their small but expressive eyes detect from above the remains abandoned after a hunt. The presence of wolves, lynxes, or eagles doesn't faze him. In fact, he prefers it because he understands that where there's a predator, there's soon to be spoils, and in the gaps left by hunters, he slips soundlessly. From high above, the raven can follow wolf packs unnoticed. It recognizes patterns and anticipates movements, and when the prey has been killed and the tension has dissolved, it perches at a safe distance. Observe. If there's still competition, wait. If conditions permit, he approaches with measured steps, jumps, feels his way, and takes what he can. But they don't always go alone. Crows form small groups that can work in a coordinated manner. Some distract other birds or smaller scavengers while others inspect. Sometimes they take turns, other times they cheat. If they've hidden food, they may pretend to bury it somewhere else to mislead. If they know another animal can open a carcass, they'll follow it until it does. Opportunism in this case is not improvised. It is silent engineering. Its elongated, agile body is designed for prolonged gliding. Its curved, strong, and precise beak allows it to tear through cold, hardened muscles or break small bones. But his most lethal tool isn't anatomical. It's mental. The raven remembers. Not just paths, but deeds, intentions, and deceptions. It has a memory capable of storing complex information and an intelligence that expresses itself not in the spectacular, but in the effective. Even in its feeding, there's a reading of its surroundings. If others arrive, the crow may move away, feigning disinterest, and then return later. If you spot an opportunity that's too risky, you don't take it. If he finds a surplus, he hides it, and he retrieves it days later when no one else knows it's there. But there is another lesser-known facet of this animal, courtship. Unlike many other scavengers, the crow doesn't just survive. It also chooses, and when mating season arrives, their behavior changes. Males seek to impress females not with force, but with signals. They carry shiny objects, fragments of glass, smooth stones, symmetrical branches. They place them before them as if offering a ritual gift. Sometimes they are leftover food, other times seemingly useless objects that carry a precise meaning in their language. They also sing. Their voice isn't melodious, it's a succession of grunts, clicks, and guttural sounds that form part of a surprisingly varied repertoire. When a female accepts courtship, a bond is established that can last a lifetime. Both parents collaborate in caring for their offspring. They build the nest, protect the eggs, and feed the chicks. There is cooperation and perseverance. The raven's intelligence is not limited to the instant. It encompasses connection, repetition, and foresight. They are social birds, but also selective. They live in groups where cooperation is essential, but trust is not a gift that comes easily. Each individual has a memory that allows them to recognize their allies as well as their enemies. This ability allows them to maintain complex support networks, but also to hold grudges for years against those who have harmed or betrayed them. When a crow is the target of aggression or betrayal, it carefully avoids it and also alerts the rest of the group to be wary of that individual. Their social intelligence goes beyond simple reaction. They also build alliances, remember favors, and negotiate their place within the group. Thus, social memory acts as a collective defense mechanism that strengthens cohesion and prevents future conflicts. On certain occasions, this intelligence is expressed in surprising behaviors. Crows have been documented remembering specific human faces and modifying their behavior toward them based on past experiences, demonstrating that their selectivity is not only instinctive, but conscious and learned. This web of complex social relationships makes crows one of the most astute animals in the animal kingdom, where every interaction is a calculation and every memory a resource for survival. In the dense forests, where light filters in sparsely and humidity covers everything, the crow moves among the high branches undisturbed. It doesn't sing at dawn, it doesn't shout for its territory, it just observes, it plans. And it acts when the environment allows it. It follows dying deer, waiting for the right moment to take advantage. It watches for other smaller scavengers, lurking in the shadows until they discover carcasses. It deceives its rivals, hides food, memorizes hiding places, and even simulates behavior to mislead. All of this isn't the product of a single generation. It's the result of centuries of inherited, polished, and repeated learning. It has no fangs, it has no venom, it doesn't have an organized group like other predators. But he has patience, and that's enough for him. The crow does not compete with the red fox in strength, but it does in strategy. He doesn't challenge it, but he follows it, and sometimes he gets ahead of it. In this forest of ancient trees and dense shadows, where the sun barely reaches the ground and where everything that is born soon dies, the raven remains outside of direct conflict. He doesn't seek to dominate the terrain. He just needs to know it better than anyone else. And while others fight, get hurt, or fall into urgency, he flies in circles, measuring each moment as if it had all happened before. Because maybe he's seen it all, and that's why he's still here. In the hidden forests, survival does not belong to the strongest. He is the one who best understands the secret rhythms of the environment. When to move, when to be silent, when to take what others leave behind. In these areas, strategy far trumps force. And although the forest hides almost everything, there is a logic that knows no boundaries. One that is repeated in the heights of the treetops, in the depths of the caves, and also in the vast expanse of the African savannas. Whether you live among the branches or under the scorching sun, in every corner of the planet there are those who hunt, and there are those who wait. Because life doesn't always reward those who take risks. Often it rewards those who observe, to the one who knows how to stay out of it, to the one who appears when the roars die down and the air smells of blood. That's not a coward. He's an opportunist. And opportunists, wherever they live, are masters of the art of survival. In Africa, this strategy has reached its most crude and visible expression. There, where every day is an open war between hunters and prey, scavengers also flourish. Species that renounce the glory of hunting, but not the banquet. In the African savanna, every moment is a battle for life. Under the relentless sun that cracks the earth and dries the air, large predators move with lethal precision. Lions stalking in packs, leopards blending into the undergrowth, cheetahs exploding with lightning speed, and wild dogs ever alert, coordinating their hunt with relentless precision. Each element of their body fulfills a precise function in the art of killing. Jaws capable of breaking bones, claws designed to grip living flesh, a speed that gives them an advantage, and a resistance that allows them to take down prey larger and heavier than themselves. Nature has provided them with all the necessary weapons to master this hostile environment, and they use them with absolute effectiveness. However, not everyone in this world chooses to walk the same path. In the shadow of these relentless predators, others have found their own way to survive. Creatures who, instead of chasing death, await it, and have learned to see an opportunity in every hunt. They are scavengers, opportunists, heirs to what remains. They don't always depend on others because the ability to hunt is still alive within them, but they have changed their ways, deciding to perpetuate their lineage without taking the risks that consume great hunters. From the open skies to the parched earth, they stalk, hover and watch. They are the invisible witnesses of each hunt and the last to leave the scene. And in the shadows of death, they are the ones who have built their own kingdom. For millions of years, African ecosystems have been shaped by the struggle between hunter and prey. Great predators, creatures honed by natural selection to stalk, pursue, and kill. But in the shadows of that perfection, there are other beings who chose another path. They are not weak, nor are they prey or pariahs of this ferocious order. They are opportunists, fully capable animals who chose not to compete on equal terms with the great hunters and instead to take advantage of the consequences of their violence. And among them all, there is one who reigns supreme in this discreet art, the vulture. This African bird belongs to an ancient lineage, and its ancestors, like so many other primitive carnivores, possessed the physical capabilities to bring down prey. They had claws, sharp beaks, and a robust body structure. But over time, and faced with fierce competition from larger, more aggressive predators, these animals found opportunity in what others disdained. Where most saw waste, they saw food. Carrion, far from being a minor resource, offered a rich and abundant source of nutrients, available without the extremely high energy costs or physical risks involved in active hunting. Evolution, instead of punishing this passive strategy, perfected it. Vultures weren't reduced to small, marginal scavengers. On the contrary, their size increased, their wingspan extended to allow for long, sustained flights over vast territories, and their physiology adapted to process materials that would be lethal to almost any other animal. Carrion isn't just dead meat. It's a cocktail of bacteria, toxins, and decaying tissue. And it was precisely there that these opportunists found their stronghold. They have one of the most extreme digestive systems in the animal kingdom. Its gastric juices are so potent that they can neutralize deadly strains of anthrax, salmonella, or botulism. Nutritionally, decomposing meat still contains the same essential proteins and minerals that fuel the muscles of a lion or cheetah. The remarkable thing is that vultures get those nutrients without traveling miles in pursuit, without tearing their legs apart in a fight, and without the constant adrenaline rush that comes with stalking and killing. The result is the same: energy to fly, to grow, and to perpetuate their species. Only the method is radically different. Contrary to the idea that their improvised diet would make them vulnerable or dependent, vultures have perfected their opportunism into a ruthless mechanism. They don't just fly over the landscape in search of chance. They closely follow the big African cats, knowing their routes, their hunting schedules, and the territories where blood is most likely to be exposed. They recognize the times when lions prefer to attack, the territories they dominate, the hunting trails they travel, and the places where they usually leave carcasses. They know that great hunters rarely completely consume their victims, often because these prey are monumental, other times because staying too long next to a fresh carcass attracts hyenas, and their presence is a risk they prefer to avoid. This information, engraved in their instinct and reinforced by daily observation, allows them to anticipate the exact moment when a kill will no longer belong to the hunters and will become available to opportunists. When this happens, vultures don't arrive alone. They can move in flocks of up to 120 individuals, spiraling down over the vast territory as soon as a prey falls. Before launching, their eyes, among the sharpest in the animal kingdom, scan the horizon for signs. They can detect a carcass from more than 5 kilometers away, even following other scavengers such as jackals. Although they may take advantage of the leftovers of others, evolution has never degraded them to a lesser status. They didn't make themselves small. They didn't become discreet or insignificant. African scavengers became essential figures for the health of the ecosystem. By consuming remains before they fully decompose, they eliminate sources of infection, control the proliferation of bacteria and toxins, and maintain a clean environment where other animals must live, drink, and feed. Far from being a weakness, this function makes them key players in the natural system, preventing the emergence of pests and diseases that could unbalance entire ecosystems. Therefore, evolution doesn't punish them, it supports them. Among the diverse group of African vultures, each species has taken on a distinct role in this macabre feast. The African white-backed vulture is often the first to arrive. Its agile body and sharp beak allow it to quickly access soft tissue. Then comes the more robust African griffon vulture, which can tear through tougher muscles. For its part, the lappet-faced vulture, with its powerful hooked beak and imposing size, assumes a dominant position, capable of displacing others and opening the toughest areas, such as ribs or tendons. The smaller hooded vulture on the In some species, such as the lappet-faced vulture, the red face appears due to the abundant blood supply to that area, which facilitates heat dissipation in extreme climates and helps maintain a stable body temperature during prolonged exposure to the sun. Contrary to popular belief, opportunists are neither cowards nor weak. They are neither prey nor victims of others. They are creatures that have learned over millennia to read the signs of death without having to provoke it. They only take risks when the benefit outweighs the cost. Approaching the remains when the lions are still prowling is a dangerous maneuver, but their knowledge of feline behavior patterns allows them to calculate the precise moments to do so. What from a human perspective might seem like a reprehensible or parasitic attitude in nature is an admirably effective strategy. Far from being an evolutionary flaw, their opportunism has turned out to be a refined survival tool. The evidence is overwhelming. They have survived periods of drought, the disappearance of other scavengers, and the harsh transformations of the African landscape. They have thrived without the need to run, to kill, or to shed a single drop of blood on their own. And in that dispassionate calculation lies its true strength. They are the eyes of heaven that always wait, those that know the habits of others better than the hunters themselves, those who have made the death of others their guarantee of life. As the extreme heat of the savannah weighs heavily on the ground, the body of the prey lies mangled in the middle of the dry grassland, surrounded by dark bloodstains and bone fragments. The lions, satiated, walk away without much haste. Their swollen stomachs and heavy gait indicate that the feast is over. Only one of the males remains behind, lying next to the remains with no real intention of defending them, but still reluctant to leave the site. From the sky, a flock of vultures has begun to descend in wide spirals. There are dozens of bodies that travel through the hot air, waiting for the exact moment to touch the ground. Most people sense that it's still too early, that approaching when a lion is still present is a risk that could cost them their lives. But not everyone obeys that calculation. One of these vultures, as arrogant as it is impatient, breaks formation and descends prematurely. His wings fold in, his feet touch the ground, and in an instant he's pecking at the flesh still hanging from an open rib. Around him, the others keep a safe distance, keeping an eye on the lion that is still a few meters away. The big cat raises its head. Its eyes, heavy with fatigue, are fixed on the figure moving beside it. It's not hunger that drives him, it's simply a territorial instinct. In a sudden movement, he stands up and advances toward his victim. The vulture, immersed in its task, takes a moment too long to escape. It spreads its wings, but fails to take flight. The blow doesn't destroy it, it barely hits it. It throws it to one side, and the bird falls violently to the ground. The lion approaches, pushes him with a paw, examines him with a look without real interest. He's not hurt, but he looks dead. There's no blood, no struggle. The bird just lies there as if its life had been extinguished in that instant. For the lion, no longer hungry or needing to kill, it is enough. He moves away. Behind them, other vultures take advantage of the distraction. They descend in a group, surround the remains, and begin feeding. Some spread their wings, others advance cautiously. The lion, irritated, turns back to face them, launching a short run to scatter them, and that's when it happens. The vulture, which seemed dead, tense and rigid, wasted no time, stands up and flies away, moving away from the spot in seconds. This recourse, feigning death in the face of a greater threat, is part of the defensive repertoire of many carrion birds. Not because they sense their lives will be spared, but because in the savannah, feigned death is often preferable to an impossible escape. Furthermore, a dead scavenger rarely sparks interest in a satiated predator. Vulture meat, saturated with bacterial toxins and pungent in taste, is a food that almost no hunter desires. The scene dissolves as the lions finally move away, and the vultures, now unthreatened, completely cover the carcass. Opportunism returns to its natural place, but not without remembering that even in its caution, in in its apparently perfect calculation, there is always a thin line between benefit and risk. A critical situation where opportunism exposes its risks and reveals an unexpected adaptation. In the wild, every move involves a calculated risk, and no strategy is without consequences. There, opportunism and cunning coexist with brute force in a constant dance for survival. In this scenario, the spotted hyenas actively participate and dominate with iron rules and implacable order. They know better than anyone how to govern a world where strength and cunning define the right to exist. The matriarchal structure of her clan allows for no hesitation. Dominant females impose their law, and their offspring inherit that privilege without question. But in the shadows of this imposed order, alliances are secretly forged. Subordinates do not aspire to freedom. Their ambition is to displace those at the top. They are not seeking to dismantle the hierarchy. They are seeking to replace it with another, with them in charge. Resentment is a silent language shared in furtive glances and in the moments of greatest hunger, when the weakened bodies of a clan in crisis become targets for their own comrades. In this environment, equality is not pursued as redemption. It is a violent adjustment that drags the strong into the common mire of survival. As if, deep down, that which cannot be achieved must be destroyed. In this bleak landscape, the spotted hyena knows no ideals, but unwittingly embodies that ancient inclination to prefer equality in misery rather than accept inequality under an open sky. Beyond these latent tensions, hunting demands its own order. When night falls, the clan mobilizes. There are no desperate runs or disorderly attacks. The hyenas advance in scattered formation, flanking their prey in a narrowing circle without arousing suspicion. The younger individuals, guided by veteran females, move forward to disorient, forcing the herbivores to disperse. Every move has a purpose: to isolate the straggler, break the rhythm of the pack, and corner the weaker piece into a dead end. The attack is consummated in a succession of swipes, lunges, and bites in which effectiveness outweighs ferocity. There is no glory in that act, only the cold urgency to feed one more day. At dawn, the bleached bones will be silent witnesses of a night in which collective cunning once again prevailed over solitary strength. In these lands, spotted hyenas and lions share nothing but the silence of the night and the persistent smell of blood. Each encounter between them is a savage negotiation where brute force and collective cunning test their limits. A trail of fresh meat floats in the air, a sure sign that the lions have hunted. In the darkness, the hyenas approach. They are not received with immediate violence, but neither with indifference. They lurk in the distance, calculating. They don't rush things. They understand perfectly well that impatience is paid for with death. The first group is barely visible, advancing in open arcs. A low growl, a snap of jaws, and the shadows multiply. Little by little, the hyenas are gaining ground, pushing the invisible boundaries of feline vigilance. There is no frontal attack, just a constant siege that exhausts and disorients. The lions guard the loot, but every passing minute tips the scales. With numbers on their side, the hyenas redouble the pressure. They approach the fence, breaking the unity of the felines, separating the youngest, distracting the most tired. The lions take a few steps back, just enough for the hyenas to occupy the space. When the moment arrives, there is no explosion of violence, but a curt, inevitable retreat. The lions simply back away, and the hyenas pounce on the remains with silent urgency. They don't celebrate. There's no pride in that triumph, only the certainty of having endured long enough. By dawn, only scattered fragments and a rancid smell clinging to the earth will remain. Here, where no power is eternal, the hyenas have imposed their will, not by force, but by persistence. Because in this harsh landscape, sometimes tenacity is worth more than roar. There is no creature more misunderstood in these lands than the spotted hyena. From a distance, his silhouette appears messy, uneven, as if his body had been assembled from disparate pieces. The front legs, higher than the back legs, give it a sloping gait, a broken step that contrasts with the elegance of felines. But that seemingly clumsy body is an impeccable tool, forged by centuries of adaptation to resist, not to dazzle. Inside, hyenas contain machinery designed to withstand what others could not. Their jaws exert a pressure capable of crushing bones, breaking skulls, and splitting vertebrae with an ease that even big cats would envy. Their stomachs digest marrow, tendons, tanned skin, and cartilage without difficulty. Where other carnivores take only the meat, hyenas take advantage of everything, not as a sign of misery, but as a survival strategy in an environment where no resource can be taken for granted. They aren't ashamed of their fame, they embody it, they are scavengers by nature, and they find leftovers not a humiliation, but an evolutionary advantage. But when circumstances demand it, they also hunt with an efficiency that belies any notion of weakness. They do this most often in groups, using a tactic that rarely fails. They harass, disperse, break down their victims' defenses, and exhaust their resistance. Each individual knows their role, each movement responds to an invisible logic that only they understand. Hyena hunting isn't about the brutal speed of a cheetah or the lethal ambush of a lion. It's a collective endeavor where the net closes slowly and seamlessly. What sounds like a sinister laugh to the human ear is, for them, a highly refined language. That broken laugh communicates range, urgency, frustration, or discovery. A high-pitched, repetitive tone signals an approaching opportunity. A deep, spaced-out growl commands respect. Even in the darkest night, without seeing each other, hyenas create an auditory map that allows them to know who is there, where they are, and what their intentions are. The apparent chaos of its sounds is, in reality, a symphony of warnings and strategies. But there is one ritual that escapes all understanding: the greeting. Whenever two hyenas meet, they approach cautiously and sniff each other's genital region. It is a brief, meticulous, essential act. There, the hierarchy is defined, old scars are detected, the scent of zeal or fatigue is perceived. It doesn't matter if they've been separated for a few minutes or several days. That contact decides who advances, who gives in, who waits. What would be grotesque for other species is an infallible protocol for them. The social organization of spotted hyenas is one of the most rigid in the animal kingdom. Females rule with sternness, and the offspring of dominant females are born with a hereditary privilege that males can never challenge. Within that relentless structure, subordinates know how to wait, not out of resignation, but because they understand that time and opportunity are their best allies. And perhaps the most disconcerting thing for anyone trying to measure them by the standards of other predators is their absolute indifference to greatness. Hyenas will never achieve the symbolic splendor of lions, nor the prowess of leopards, but they don't seek it either. His is a discreet, persistent existence, made up of nocturnal sieges, broken bones, and inglorious victories. They do not desire the throne because they know that in these lands kings fall, but those who resist remain. Therefore, when lions abandon a half-eaten kill, it is the hyenas who claim it. They do not rush forward with abandon. They surround, assess, erode the will of those who still watch. And when numbers and the night play in their favor, they take the place that others leave. It's not conquest or humiliation. It's a way of writing about its permanence. What for some is a miserable life, for them is a nameless form of government, a low-profile strategy that has worked for generations. In a land where everything changes and no one holds sway for long, the spotted hyenas have chosen not to excel, but to endure. And when the last light of day recedes and the sounds of the night grow tense, that broken, persistent laughter fills the air again. It's not a joke, it's a warning, a sign that they're still there, waiting, as always. The body of a spotted hyena is a tool built to last. Every muscle and bone serves a purpose that goes beyond appearance. Beneath that skin, weathered by dust and wounds, lies a machine designed to survive where others fail. Their jaws are not made for the lethal bite of a feline, but for something rougher and more primitive, crushing. When they close on a bone, the pressure effortlessly exceeds that which any other African carnivore can exert. The muscles that control this gesture, tense and fibrous, are anchored in a robust skull, designed to withstand extreme tension without breaking. It's an unpretentious force, brutal and precise, and behind those jaws, a hyena's neck comfortably holds prey twice its weight, shaking dead bodies or dismembering heat-hardened remains. But what follows after the flesh and bones is even more relentless. A hyena's stomach operates with a chemistry that borders on corrosion. Its interior maintains a pH so low it could dissolve bone fragments in a matter of hours. Dried tendons, rotten marrow, and cartilage softened by decomposition are reduced to food without the organism being altered in the slightest. Where meat becomes dangerous to others, the hyena transforms it into energy. Digesting the indigestible is not an option, it is their specialty. But that ability would be useless without an equally ruthless immune defense. Hyenas possess one of the most robust immune systems among African carnivores. Not only do they resist the common bacteria that thrive in fresh meat, but also those that turn a carcass into a toxic hotbed. In your body, lethal colonies of Clostridium, Salmonella, and Bacillus anthracis find an invulnerable enemy. Where decomposition creates a hostile breeding ground for any other carnivore, the hyena feeds without fever, without infection, without recoil. Part of that fierce immunity lies in the abundance of natural antibodies dispersed throughout your bloodstream and soft tissues. These always-on agents patrol every organ and every wound in search of invaders. A hyena's saliva, rough and alkaline in pH, carries antimicrobial proteins capable of minimizing infections caused by constant fighting within the pack or by tearing at prey. Even deep bites heal without oozing, sealed by a natural biochemistry that prevents bacterial growth. Added to this physiological shield is a unique genetic adaptation. Hyenas retain a high level of diversity in the major histocompatibility complex genes responsible for detecting and neutralizing pathogens. This variability allows them to recognize a vast range of bacteria and viruses, reacting quickly before the infection spreads. It is an invisible advantage that protects not only the individual, but the entire social structure of the clan, which coexists, confronts, and feeds in constant contact with the same contaminated remains. That talent for consuming the oldest and most contaminated carrion would be lethal to any other carnivore. Here, under the merciless heat of the savannah, a dead body decomposes in a few hours. The blood thickens, the flesh ferments, and deadly bacteria multiply at an invisible rate. But in the body of a hyena, that threat has no place. What represents death to others is, for them, an unrestricted opportunity. Even open wounds, common in a species that tears at each other for food and dominance, rarely become infected. These specimens withstand deep cuts, bites, and tears without showing signs of fever or sepsis. Natural defenses circulate in their tissues, minimizing the risk of infection, allowing them to continue hunting, eating, and fighting without weakening. It is a body made to endure, even when the flesh of others has already surrendered to decomposition. At an invisible level, their genetics preserve an exceptional variety in the genes that regulate immune defenses. This diverse repertoire allows them to confront a range of diseases that would wipe out other species. Where others fall, hyenas remain. And so, what to some seems like a miserable life made of scraps and carrion is actually a refined strategy. Because while fresh meat is scarce and the kings of the day retreat to the shelter of the shadows, they roam the margins, devouring what no one else can touch. Not out of desperation, but because his body, forged by centuries of relentless selection, can afford that advantage. At dawn, when the carcasses are reduced to bleached bones, their droppings, hard and pale from excess calcium, will remain as a sign of complete digestion. It is a silent testament to their ability to extract every fiber from a prey. In these lands, visible power is celebrated in the swift run of a cheetah or the roar of a lion. But true strength isn't always evident. Sometimes it resides in what persists even with the passage of time. And no creature persists like the spotted hyena. But this resilience isn't an isolated curiosity. It's the foundation upon which the species has built its survival in one of the most hostile environments on the planet. Their combination of jaw strength, relentless digestion, and unwavering immunity doesn't just allow them to consume offal, it has guaranteed them a place where others have disappeared. Over the centuries, as severe droughts wiped out herds and epidemics carried by diseased carrion devastated populations of lions, leopards, and wild dogs, spotted hyenas thrived. Where rotting flesh became a source of death for all, they continued to feed, immune to toxins, bacteria, and fevers that disrupted the natural balance in other species. It is in these scenarios of mass decline that his specialization showed its true dimension. This isn't a marginal existence or a secondary role. Hyenas don't occupy what others leave behind, but rather what no one else is prepared for. And in the harsh logic of these lands, this form of resistance is worth more than any display of force. Its success depends not on perfect hunting, but on surviving all that is imperfect. So when the great migratory herds dissolve, when predators retreat due to illness or hunger, and carrion abounds in a heat that ferments meat in a matter of hours, It is the hyenas who traverse these fields of death with unbroken gait, because where others fall, they remain, and they will continue to do so. There are creatures that dominate the landscape by sheer presence. They announce themselves with their voices, mark the terrain with their gait, and are unafraid of conflict. And there are others that choose silence, not out of fear, but by choice. On the fringes of Africa, where the savanna begins to close in on the thickness of hidden jungles, a hunter walks alone among thick shadows and paths hidden by roots and undergrowth. There's no roar, no pack, just a silhouette slipping unseen, barely discernible by the rustle of the leaves as they close behind it. The leopard doesn't share roots with other large predators. It doesn't challenge the hierarchy, it evades it. It prefers the side forests, where the foliage covers everything and danger travels in groups. There's no exposure there, but there are no allies either. He doesn't need them. He hunts alone. He kills alone. He feeds alone. And when he comes across the fresh tracks of a pride of lions, he turns silently, changes course and waits. Because in this dance of survival, the first mistake is the last. Their markings are minimal. A scratch on a branch, urine on a bent trunk. Marks that only another leopard could read. Everything else is camouflage, deterrence, strategy, and even though it is one of the most effective predators on the continent, it feels no obligation to hunt unless necessary. If he comes to a clearing and finds fresh prey, half abandoned by another hunter, he doesn't hesitate. He approaches, checks, and feeds. He doesn't ask whose it was. He doesn't care. The meat is there. And the jungle doesn't reward ethics. It rewards intelligence. This doesn't make it any less lethal, it makes it more efficient, because the leopard doesn't seek glory. It seeks continuity. Opportunism, in his case, is not a necessity. It is a possibility that he chooses to use when the opportunity presents itself, because even among the greats, prestige is not worth what the next day of life is worth. Lions fight over carcasses with other lions. Hyenas fight over carcasses with other hyenas. In the jungle and savanna, no one feeds with pride. They feed on whatever is available. And when there's nothing, the leopard climbs the tree, waits for nightfall, and starts all over again. He never despairs, he never overexposes himself. He can hunt, and he does, but if he can avoid it, he can do so too. This gesture shatters the illusion of a fixed hierarchy, of predatory purity. Because here everyone takes what they can, and if that means waiting for someone else to kill, then you wait. When it disappears into the vegetation, it leaves no trace. It leaves a lesson. In this hidden ecosystem, even the most lethal hunters take advantage of what others leave behind. And in that unseen silence, the leopard confirms what rules every deep jungle. True power lies not in attacking, but in knowing when not to. In the deep forests, where light barely touches the ground and the air is filled with moisture and whispers, survival isn't always a matter of strength or speed. Often it is cunning that decides fate. For millennia, nature has rewarded the most skilled hunters, those capable of climbing, stalking, and catching with precision. But it has also given space to those who prefer to wait, to those who choose to take advantage of what others haven't finished devouring. In these closed environments, opportunism becomes a strategy as valuable as active hunting. Animals like the red fox move patiently through the undergrowth, alert to signs of newly captured prey, capable of changing their tactics in an instant. The leopard, a master of stealth, avoids display and finds refuge in the thicket, allowing it to combine hunting with waiting. High above, gibbons communicate with calls that pierce the forest, searching for ripe fruit or warning of danger while exploiting scattered and foreign resources when the opportunity arises. These animals are neither weak nor minor. They are specialists in reading the pulse of an ecosystem where every movement can be decisive. They wait for the right moment, know the habits of their neighbors, and understand that nature does not reward immeasurable courage, but rather silent efficiency. Every piece of meat left behind after a hunt, every fallen fruit or insect that completes its life cycle is part of a complex system where everyone plays an indispensable role. The scavengers and opportunists of the forest are invisible custodians of this balance, working in the shadows to maintain the health of the forest. It doesn't matter whether they hunt or wait, whether they climb or hide. Survival in these hidden worlds relies on intelligence to adapt, exploit, and endure. In every leaf, on every branch, on every forgotten path, life is renewed thanks to those who know when to act and when to wait. True power lies not only in the strength that overthrows, but in the patience that ensures the continuation of generations to come.